What's on, ladies and gentlemen? My name's Ross, I like games, and today I'm excited because for a couple of months now I've been wanting to cover the Final Fantasy trading card game. And I've been reading, and I've been playing, and I've been researching, and I think I'm finally ready to start making videos about the Final Fantasy trading card game. If you're at this channel largely for stuff like Keyforge or Transformers, that's fine. But I love me some Final Fantasy, and hopefully either you love it too, or I can try and make you love it. That's the goal, ladies and gentlemen. So we're going to start off today looking at a beginner's guide. I have been, for the past couple months, a beginner. So I'm going to share with you all the research I've done and all the things that I thought I needed to know. But I couldn't find all the information in one handy place. Hopefully you can. Now the weird thing is, this didn't just start in October 2016 with the release of Opus 1, the first expansion. This is actually a reboot of a Japanese game that was debuted on the 25th of February 2011. They actually had 15 expansions, but then they rebooted for this. And some of the cards used in this game are actually old cards which have been reworked with different abilities and values. I'm not an expert on the old card game, but I know it didn't come out over here, and this one has, so that's a very good thing. Now, obviously it is based on the Final Fantasy series of games, but put it this way, I don't think in a 10-minute video I'd be able to go through the Final Fantasy games. There are the main series games up to Final Fantasy 15, which is the most recent, and then there are spin-offs galore. And the trading card game really does focus in on all of them. Now, generally speaking, what happens is each opus or set focuses on a few different games. So the next set being released is Opus 9, and that is going to be focused on Final Fantasy 4, 6, 8, 14, 15, and Mobius. But you'll notice that the character on the front of the box is actually Vincent from Final Fantasy 7, so just because the set doesn't focus in on your particular favourite game, doesn't mean there won't be a little bit of representation. And the releases are generally free a year. They equate to roughly once every 4 months. So if we look at the last few expansions, Opus 5 was released on March the 23rd, Opus 6 was released on July the 13th, and Opus 7 was released on November the 2nd. That was all in 2018. This year we've so far had Opus 8, which came out on the 22nd of March, and Opus 9, Lords and Chaos, yeah, they're starting to get subtitles now, is going to be coming out on July the 19th. So we've got a roughly March, July, November timetable rolling around for these. One every 4 months, free a year, makes it more affordable when you compare it to something like Pokemon, which has 4 sets, one every 3 months. Speaking of affordability, play sets in this game are free, like you would find in a Transformers TCG, rather than 4 that you would find in Pokemon, which means even the most expensive of cards, you'll never need more than 3. What is really cool is that most of the promos seem to just be alternate art versions of cards that came out in the opuses. So there was a promo last while that came around a little while ago, and on eBay you'll pay upwards of £20 for this card. Yeah, I think roughly $30. But you can buy the one from Opus 8 for like £3. So it doesn't really matter like that. You can use the non-promo Lastwell, although the promo, in my opinion, does have better art. Come at me in the comments if you disagree. Now, having been someone that really tried to get into the Dragon Ball Super TCG and is still into it, the fact that there are so many exclusive promos that go up in price really quickly makes me very sad. That's not what you get from the Final Fantasy TCG. I keep looking at deck lists and you're just not expected to buy loads of exclusive promos. That is really quite good. Speaking of which, there is an excellent site for looking up deck lists. I'll link it in the description. Now, in terms of rarity, it's a little bit confusing because you've got common, they're common, rare, which are really uncommon in other card games, hero, which is rare in other card games, and legend, which essentially equates to super rare. Generally speaking, there will be 14 legends in each expansion, and when you buy a box, you're looking at somewhere around 8 legends per box. I've not done the maths myself, but a couple people have told me that if you buy 2 or 3 boxes and then move on to singles, you should be able to get a playset of everything you need, everything in the set in fact, which again, that is a lot better than you would do in a lot of card games. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's the most budget card game ever, but I am going to tell you that compared to other card games I've looked into, this is a little bit friendlier on the wallet in terms of trying to put good decks together. Now, there is one other rarity we need to talk about, and it is starter rare. So, every so often they do release starter decks, and they're released in kind of 2 or 3 at a time, and they do have exclusive cards in the starter set. They have cards that you cannot get anywhere else, which incidentally makes it really worth buying the starter sets. You see this in games like Dragon Ball. You don't see this in games like Pokemon, where you'll get exclusive holo versions of cards, but you don't get any exclusive cards that cannot be found elsewhere. Now, I say exclusive to starter sets, that's not strictly true, because every pack of the Final Fantasy trading card game has a holo card, and you can actually get all of the starter rares as holos in the appropriate set, i.e. the set was released about the same time. So that's kind of cool. Trying to get all of the starter cards as holos in boxes, I'm going to be honest, is not going to be the easiest thing. But it means if you want the starter cards nice and easily, go and buy the starter decks. And if you want to bling out and have holo versions of them, you're there as well. Now, I am going to run through the very basics of play here, but I do mean the very basics. If you guys want a how to play video, I will be more than happy to make one. I've already done it for Keyforge and Transformers after all. But what I want to do here is run through the very, very basics. So generally speaking, your characters here are split up into forwards and backups. Forwards are there to attack or block your opponent's attacks, and backups are there to generate resources. So when you need to generate a resource, let's go back to Laswell. There's a nice little example. It is a 2-cost ice card. So you need to pay 2 to play it, and one of those must be ice. So you can discard 1 ice card from your hand. Discarding a card from your hand will generate 2 CP as it is. And dulling a backup, tapping it by the parlance of most other games, will generate 1. So either you discard 1 card from your hand, or you dull 2 backups, and you can play Laswell down. Remember, at least one of the costs needs to be paid with ice. There are a bunch of different elements in the Final Fantasy trading card game, and what is actually really cool is that each of the elements is themed after particular things. So while we're going with Laswell, let's talk about ice. It is a manipulative element which specializes in deflection and other abilities that interfere with the opponent's actions. Lots of freezing, for instance. And generally speaking, you attack the opponent, you need to take away 8 life, and when you do, you win. Forwards can attack, forwards can block, and backups sit there too. Well, they do other things as well, but they're generally just sitting there generating CP while using any other useful abilities they may have. One of the rules I find extremely interesting is that you can only have one of each character on the field at a time. So you can only use 1 cloud, you can only have 1 cloud out. But then they have S abilities, and in order to use an S ability, you need to discard a cloud from your hand, so that in that way they get to balance the you can only have 1 cloud on the field, with the but I'm playing more than 1 cloud in my deck. So that's kind of nice. There are also monsters that don't enter dulled, and there are summons that have one-off effects. One of my favourite things about the game is EX Burst. Every time you take a life off your opponent, they essentially discard the top card of their deck. But if there's an EX Burst ability on the card discarded, they get to use it there and then, so you actually sometimes get a benefit from losing a life. That's kind of cool. It's one of my favourite things about the game. Really, it introduces an element of chaos into the game, which makes me very happy indeed. Now, there is a proper tournament structure for the Final Fantasy trading card game, and generally speaking, we have regionals, which tend to be the smaller tournaments. And we've got Crystal Cups, which are one step up, and there you get a few in each country and they're dotted around here and there. You've then got Euros, or the equivalent for other territories, and it all goes up to the World Championships, Euros and Worlds being invite only. Don't have an invite, go play side events, but you can't play in the main event. Incidentally, the graphic on the screen does come from the lovely Tim Schilder, who runs the OP for Final Fantasy in Europe, and you can see he's done a grand old job of explaining it. Again, really this would be a video in and of itself, but I suppose as a beginner's guide what you need to know is this. There is a healthy organised play with lots of tournaments and a structure that goes all the way up to a World Championship. So if you want to get involved, there are plenty of tournaments to sate your appetite. And there's plenty more I could tell you about the Final Fantasy trading card game, but in terms of what I wanted to know when I started looking into it, this was it. Roughly what it is, the vague rules, how often do sets come out, how expensive is it, what are the tournaments like. That's what I've tried to answer in this video. If you're a big fan of the Final Fantasy TCG and you think there's things that should have been here that aren't, pop them in the comments section. Similarly, if you've got questions you want answered that I haven't answered in this video, pop them down in the comments and myself or another lovely person should be able to provide you the information that you seek. I'm going to be on a Final Fantasy TCG journey. I'm going to be playing a lot of the game. There's going to be more videos, don't worry. If you just want stuff like Keyforge and Transformers, that's going to keep going. I love those games. But I'm going to be introducing new stuff onto the channel as we go. And Final Fantasy, it's a great game. I'm loving playing it. And I want to share great games with you lovely ladies and gentlemen. Final Fantasy definitely fits that bill. Hopefully you'll be along for some of the journey with me. Let's play some Final Fantasy. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to hear from you guys. So tell me in the comments section, what do you think about the game? Are you a fan of the game? Are you looking to get into the game? Is there anything I can tell you to convince you? Go nuts, ladies and gentlemen, but please do remember the rule. Be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, and follow me on Twitter at The Wassy, where we talk about a whole host of games like Final Fantasy, and a bunch of others. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time. Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross and you've been watching the very first video I've done on the Final Fantasy TCG, but definitely not the last. Also, Wassy Plays!